Okay, Michael, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you for putting on the recording. This is the December 5th, 2022 Finance Administration and Police Subcommittee meeting. And first item is roll call. Let the records reflect that the chair, myself, Vice Mayor Walter is here, along with the Vice Chair, Mayor Todd Lane. City staff. City staff is noted correctly. Kevin Thompson is here, Chief Ferguson. Finance Director Holmes is
She's absent.
She's absent. And City Manager David Kelly. Public comment, anyone wishing to address the subcommittee on items not appearing on the agenda may do so. And seeing no one here that wants to talk about items in general, Michael, is there anyone out there with their hand raised?
Thank you, Chair. No one is raising their hands at this time.
Okay, so let's bring it to communications. Any communications?
No communications, Chair.
Approval of the minutes for October the 3rd. Everyone have a chance to look at them? I did, and they look fine.
Yep.
Okay.
All approved.
All right, all approved. No no's on that. New business. Why don't we go ahead and jump around a little bit so we can accommodate one of our guests. We're going to jump to item number 5. I'm sorry, 4.5. The application for library commissioner from Helen Broughton. So is this yours, Kevin?
Chair, I'm happy to take this item, and I'm going to real quick when I pull up. So since the for maybe lack of a better word, resignation of our current library commissioner stepping down, Ms. Reese Fox, who's president, we have been advertising to fill this vacancy for about 1 year now. We recently received a application in November from Miss Helen Broughton. I don't know if she's here in the attendees list. Let's take a look.
They are not on the list at this time unless they are the caller with a phone number ending in 5880.
Okay. Indicating an interest in serving as the library commission. Subsequent to publishing the agenda packet for this meeting, we received 2 additional applications. One from Ms. Brooke Green, as well as an application from Ms. Jane Elias. And our city clerk also received an inquiry from another resident about serving on the Sonoma County Library Commission. Initially, when we agendized this, given the vacancy was published for some time, and we made a number of efforts to fill it, we were inclined to recommend appointment of the one applicant. But with the additional applicants, the staff suggests that the subcommittee, take time to review the 3 applicants and may want to consider whether to, have a maybe an interview process. It might even be helpful to work with our most recent library commissioner, kind of maybe an overview of kind of the responsibilities, just so that it's clear to whoever the applicants are that are interested in the position, to really understand the roles and responsibilities and what it entails. But this was agendized to recommend the appointment of Ms. Broughton. She did express to me that she may have some conflicts on certain Wednesdays when the commission meeting, but that needed to be looked at more closely, and that might be a reason why to just take a pause and review the 3 applications and see if we get one more. And but Chair, I'll post back to you just that the overview.
Thank you. Just before I turn it over for general comment, was there a deadline for submitting these applications?
Well, there originally, when we first posted the petition, I think there was a timeline for submittal. But we didn't get any applicants, so we've just continued the posting for the vacancy.
Okay, but she was the first one that submitted. And I'm just wondering why all of a sudden we have a flood of applicants. I know Brooke is there. And who else is out there? I'm just kind of curious why now everybody's stepping forward.
Yeah, so we have Brooke Green, Jane, Elias have joined us, and the other interested party was a gentleman named Joe Frankel. I don't know why all of a sudden we just got new applications. We've been pushing it for a while, but
It may be just simply seeing it on the agenda. And maybe didn't catch the notices. I'm not sure.
Okay. Let me just open it up. Tom, anything to say before I turn it over to the public? Jane?
No, that was the question I had, is why do we have this open for so long? And then when one person finally applies, now other people really want in. I'm baffled.
Yeah.
So,
with two of them in the public, if you'd like, we can, Brooke is raising her hand. If you wanted to move to public comment, we can.
Okay.
is that fair, or is this a type of an interview? I just want to make sure that I don't do anything wrong.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I don't view this as an interview. I'm just kind of curious and, you know, do we want to just go with the recommendation on the table, or do we want to open up the process?
Yes, sir.
Needless to say, we want the best candidate possible. I'd like to know more about what the conflict of interest is going to be on meeting dates of the library commission.
Yeah, and I think it relates to we've been operating under AB 361, which provides for virtual meeting attendance. I think with the anticipation that the sunset, AB 361 is going to sunset, that for the most part, attendees or commissioners will be required to attend in person or follow the new procedures for virtual attendance. And so given that change, I think, which was subsequent to the submittal of the application, there just may have been some pause to think about whether, the schedule can still, or the personal schedule can still be accommodated. But I think that's maybe where some feedback from our previous commissioner might be helpful in terms of meeting length and location, just to be certain if any of the candidates council or the subcommittee considers fully apprised of the time commitments.
Yeah, I see she's Helen's also on the Citrus Fair board, so I'm not sure if that.
Yeah, and Chair, just so you're aware, Helen just emailed me. They are the caller, so we're able to speak to her as well.
Okay, good. Jane, before I open it up, would you like to add anything? I'm sorry, Reese. I saw you. Reese?
Yeah, they have been operating since COVID started Zooming. And they have wanted to get back to the in-person because that actually is more functional for them. And it means driving down to Roner Park at least once a month for committee meetings, however many committees you're on, and you're usually required to be on one committee. That means another drive to Roner Park. I know you said Brooke is one of the applicants and Jane's the other applicant.
Yes.
I know both of them have talked to me about being on the commission and, wondering what the requirements, of course, Jane probably was well aware, were of being on the commission. And what kind of person are they looking for to fill this position? You do not have anything to do with the operation of the library. I mean, the operational is strictly from director below. Commission has nothing to do with it.
Right.
Mainly you deal with the budget and hiring a director and, issues like that, outreach into the community. And the one thing that you have to remember, and I have seen commissioners come and some of them have had a very difficult time. Yes, you are appointed by your city or entity, whatever it may be. However, you represent the whole county. It is not just the city that you are appointed by, that you are there to hammer away at. And some of them has taken some while to learn, you know, that you have to be a broader thinker than just locked in Cloverdale. I know when I first considered resigning because of health issues, it just started into COVID and it was just a flat. I couldn't find anybody. And it's just been in the last 6 months or so that people have actually begun thinking outside of being locked down, I think. So I think that that may be part of it. So, yeah, that's kind of where it's at.
Best guess, what do you think the time commitment is on a monthly basis?
Probably 10 to 15 hours, probably closer to 15. And if you really want to get involved, I mean, it's a lot more.
Yeah.
But you can minimize it at about 15, say.
Well, there's some hands raised, so Michael, why don't we see what Brooke Green has to say?
Sure. And just to clarify for the folks in the audience, this is not an interview. This is the time for questions or comments. Is that correct?
Right, right. Okay. Thank you, Michael. It's not.
Okay. And did you want to do a 3-minute timer or let them speak at will?
No, just let them speak at will. If it drags on, we'll let them know.
Okay, go ahead, Brooke. I've just given you permission to speak.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Yes, Reese and I discussed this probably 4 or 5 months ago when I was interviewing her for a column in the Sonoma County Gazette on the subject of the library. And at that time, Reese was really, from what I understood, hoping to get someone who was younger and maybe more representative of the Hispanic community. So that, coupled with really giving some thought to the amount of time it would take, made me back off. But when I saw it was on the agenda and you had somebody, I thought I would throw my hat in the ring.
Well, thank you, Brooke. Jane, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Gus. And thank you, Mayor Lands. As you know, I'm very familiar with the library commission position, just simply out of context. But also it's something that I have been really kind of considering for a number of months. And coming out of COVID, I think, you know, and really as the library is opening up, I do have enough flexibility within my current job to be able to commit this amount of time to this position. To me, it's a very important position. I'm very familiar with the library, a lot of their structure. So I work with partners that are under, you know, JPA structures, and I think, you know, I would love to have the opportunity to represent the city of Cloverdale on the commission. And I do work down here in Santa Rosa, so if they do go back to in-person meetings, it's not too far of a drive for me to get down to Rohnert Park for that. That time commitment of the drive is not too much of an issue. So that's a few of the reasons other than what you've got in the application packet I submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
And I'm gonna go ahead and give permission to Helen. She's on a phone. You might have to press *6 or *9, Helen, to be able to speak, if you'd like to.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Helen, please.
Oh, great. Okay, great. So I'm excited to hear you have other applicants because I filled out an application a number of years ago, probably before I had kids, to do library commission because I love the library. But when it got to that checkbox that said I have enough time, I just couldn't check the box. And this time I thought, you know what, I can squeeze this in and I'll check the box. So because Cloverdale should have a representative, I love the library. I'm a heavy library user. My kids get excited to go to the library. And I've been on plenty of boards and know the drill. But if you have other applicants, that sounds great, because what happened, I think on the application it said first Mondays, and I said, great, no problem. But it's actually first Wednesdays. I attended the meeting last month as a attendee, and the library commission meeting, to check it out. And they seemed like a reasonable group of people, and the meeting was a standard meeting. And it's first Wednesdays. So my husband does work for the town of Windsor, and they have their town council meetings on first and third Wednesdays. So if he gets called to a council meeting, then I will have my kids with me, which would make it really hard for me to go to Rohnert Park. I'd have to take them with me, which the Library Commission may not appreciate if it's in person, or I would have to post on my front door potentially that I'm having an open meeting, and I wouldn't feel comfortable having the public in my house during a Library Commission meeting. So even though he doesn't go to town council every first Wednesday, there is a potential that I would have a conflict on those days.
Well, Helen, thank you for being forthright with that and understanding that there are other applicants for us to select from. Mayor Lambs, anything to add to this?
They're all in the meeting.
Not at this point, no.
Sorry.
I think that we should move forward and do interviews at this point instead of just appointing.
Okay. Okay, well, I think I agree with the mayor. I think it's we have some really good candidates that fill some pretty big shoes, and I think we owe it to the community to make sure that everybody gets to come through and share with us their views on how that role will unfold for them. So I'd like to open it up to the interview process. So if you could just get that set up. My vision is we make a recommendation for one individual back to the council, providing them with all the applicants that had applied. So.
And Chair, we're happy to do that, set up an interview process and coordinate that with, and would you like yourself and Mayor Land to be on that interview committee?
I'd like to see if Reese could be on that as well.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
She knows the inner workings of that position better than us. But I think one of us, I don't know what.
Either or
Yeah, either
one
or.
or both, yeah.
And maybe a question for Reese. Do you know, is it possible to appoint an alternate? You know, some of our committees have alternates. I don't know if the commission has the appointments can have alternates.
That's not been a typical practice, and I don't believe it's in the JPA, but I'll go home and check it out, because I've still got all that stuff.
Gotcha.
So I don't believe it's
So is that
written such.
So will you bring this back to the next subcommittee meeting?
Well, we'll work on getting the interviews scheduled,
Okay.
and if there's a recommendation from that interview process, we could agendize that, unless you'd like us to
Okay.
put all the applications on, or we can put them all on with the recommendation that's made by the committee.
Does that have to go to council or can we appoint?
No, it should go to council. All right, well, unless anyone has anything else to say on this topic, we're gonna move along. Thank you for taking the time to come and share with us today, and I look forward to speaking with you more about this at a future date.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reese.
Thank you guys for doing this. I
Yeah.
have been trying for so long to find somebody. So,
Yeah, we told you, you couldn't leave until we found a replacement, so you're working hard at it. Thank
yeah,
you.
really. Anyway, but thank you, and thank you for moving it up so that I can.
Yep.
go home.
You're welcome to
Take it
stay.
now.
You're welcome to stay.
No, I'm gonna go home and, like I say now,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay. So we're gonna go back to the agenda, and that would be item number 5, new business, Clover Springs HOA maintenance agreement.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this particular agenda item was brought forward at the request of the subcommittee based on public comment. There was a comment that made at a previous meeting from Ms. Susie Cummings recommending that the subcommittee review or discuss the maintenance agreement that was approved by council for at the time referred to as Del Webb's Clover Springs. Now we generally call it Clover Springs. In essence, the agreement is a plan for the maintenance and management of the open space areas that were dedicated as part of the approval of the Clover Springs project. There were a number of areas that were dedicated to the city. So the city technically is the underlying owner by way of the tentative map that was approved and the precise development plan that was approved by council, and also the development agreement. But with that said, the underlying conditions of approval provided that the HOA would be responsible for the maintenance of those facilities. It includes, linear park, linear trails, area referred to as Bad Hill, because it had some sensitive species issues, and the creek corridor. So generally, the maintenance agreement or plan provides how the HOA will how they were responsible for the maintenance and what they're responsible for. Most recently, we've had heightened concern around management of vegetation for fire management purposes. I know Ms. Cummings was very active in the development of the wildfire protection plan and had a focused interest in managing some of the vegetation that was within these open space maintenance areas that are in the maintenance plan. And so there was kind of a call or interest in having the city take a greater role in maintaining some of the vegetation landscape areas. But a lot of that was kind of outside the purview of the maintenance agreement. It was really, I think, directed to address, over the years, vegetation has been managed maybe less intensively, and there, some need for vegetation management. We've seen that up at obviously the adjacent Porterville Creek open space. With that said, the HOA, we published a correspondence that came in after that meeting from Miss Kelly Ray. Kelly is the community association manager for Clover Springs after the retirement of the previous association director. And she wanted to be clear that the board of directors is really the responsible entity for communicating around maintenance of those areas, and kind of noted that from a fire management perspective, appreciative of the work that was done to do some of the fire fuel reduction, but that the association doesn't see a need to revise the current maintenance plan. I think from staff perspective, we're in alignment. We're not prepared to take over maintenance of those areas that are currently maintained by the HOA. We do work collaboratively with them when they get work done. We try to reduce their fees for permits and things like that, recognizing that there is underlying city ownership, and that it's good for the community to have well-maintained areas. But they do have their own maintenance team and staffing, and it's a pretty large amount of area that they and then slightly different maintenance standards than I think we do as a city, and some different concerns with their being a senior community. So really this is just kind of put on for the subcommittee discussion. No specific action being requested or required. Really, this was brought to you as a request to have a conversation, and have staff happy to address any concerns or issues. Again, I want to note our staff did help the Cloverdale, primarily at the request of the Cloverdale Fire District, to assist with some of the work that was done on that hill, kind of removed some of the immediate fire fuels, and I think that was just done in good faith, but wasn't intended to set a tone that we were going to be taking over responsibility of maintaining the rest of the vegetation and within Clover Springs. And I don't know, Chair, I think you might have been on council when this project was involved.
Yeah.
Some of
I
the
remember the discussions about that hill. And, but you should know by now, you touch it, you own it. But before I just have one question, but Mayor Lance, anything on your end?
I think that we went above and beyond at this point. I really do. I think that the city and the parks crew helped out one of the community members who was very adamant about the need or the desire for this due to their fear of fire. I think between the fire district and the city and their own HOA, they've proven that they've got it under control. So I think we're in the right place.
And the city did step forward when there was some concerns from the folks that lived on, I think it was Sonoma Avenue, the cul-de-sac back there about kids back there on their bikes and making jump ramps and all. We stepped up to the plate and took care of that issue. I know I had to put up extra fencing along there as well. And I think the other thing that we do that's not part of the HOA is the poop stations. I think Hector still goes in there and empties those and make sure they're stocked with bags and all, and that's not part of the agreement, but we do it anyhow.
right, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We do. Then that speaks to the collaboration. We continue to stock the doggy bags and maintain the disposal stations. You know, because again, recognizing there's the community does use those trails, so
Right.
that's kind of our contribution. But otherwise, the HOA is responsible for maintenance.
Michael, is there anyone out there on Zoom that would like to chat with us?
Thank you, Chair. No one's raising their hand at this time.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there's nothing further on it, I just want to say thank you, staff, for getting this together. And let's move on to the next item, which is the bonding capacity for police station and any USDA funding.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So it was the subcommittee. I know the mayor was directed staff to look at determining what our bond capacity is. And we thought we would be able to assess that capacity internally, but it looks like it's a little more technical and complicated than we were able to do just without some professional assistance. So we're unable to give you a specific answer on what our bonding capacity is in the community. And then the USDA funding was likewise something that we had previously considered as part of constructing a new public safety facility. We had kind of pre-approval for a funding up to about $11 million in way of a low interest loan. I know based on our analysis, despite the low interest rate being fairly below market, nonetheless the principal payments were somewhere between 800,000 and $1 million a year, just even given the low interest rate. But we haven't followed up with USDA, with the revisions in the costs for constructing a new station. What does the debt service schedule look like, and how that relates to our bonding capacity. So that's an area we need to do more homework on to really look at what's available and whether that's a feasible means to cover the costs associated with a low interest loan. I think probably this to really further this effort, it might be someone we need to bring in some technical assistance to, as part of developing a more comprehensive program around what kind of costs for a station or could we bear and afford, and what kind of measures they would take to be able to garner, voter support. Because even with USDA loan, significant payments, it's not something currently that our budget would support being able to pay on an annual basis without some additional revenue to support those payments. So there might be other avenues to consider besides USDA loan. In terms of financing, a new public safety station. So,
Mayor, anything on this?
We talked about it this morning. I told you I'd provide you a name of an advisor that we've used in the past. I just now did that. I just sent you over the link to their company.
okay.
They're the ones that I've worked with over the past 15 years with Measure G, Measure H, and independent districts with schools. They're very good. They will do all the homework for you and would be good people to contact if they can do.
Well, just a couple things, in particular order, Councilmember Paula and myself have been talking and discussing the possibility of setting up an ad hoc committee. And he's more than willing to sit on that committee, even though he's not on the council anymore. But having the role of police chief in a couple of different cities and law enforcement for a number of years, he's more than happy to sit and help move this project forward. Of course, it would be up to the city council and Chief Ferguson to decide who else he'd like on that committee. But we thought the interim police chief that we had from Cotati, I can't remember his name. I'm sorry?
Bob.
Yeah, I can't remember his last name, but Bob was instrumental in getting the police station built in Cotati. I'm of the old school. If it's it's okay to plagiarize a blueprint of a building like that, and just kind of dump it on our lot. But so I just want to throw that out there. Also with USDA, they would be a good contact for us to make right up front to find out if President Biden's grant programs or anything, if there's anything special for rural cities now, maybe that we don't know about, any type of grants or anything to help build a new facility like that. So we could probably do that ahead of doing an ad hoc committee or checking out bonding capacity. Also, I'm kind of curious on PG&E in the program that we've entered into with them. How is that going to affect
The money we're putting into that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a bonding issue.
It is something that we brought up before we signed it, that it can affect us.
Yeah.
It's lighting and HVAC, so.
Yeah.
But it is debt service, so
Right.
whether that's what I don't know is how that factor into
Yeah.
our bonding capacity. And does it have an impact, and if so, what is it? It's a unique program.
Yeah. Well, I think the way Councilmember Paul was talking about doing this is going out right to the public right away and go for a parcel assessment. And usually those parcel assessments are pretty good, to bond against. So how do we want to? What's the next step? I see no hands raised. I see no hands raised out there. Michael, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Yeah, there'd be a little hand by that attendance, right?
Yeah.
Is that how that works? Okay.
Well, just by way of background, we did do quite a bit of architectural design work for a new police station or public safety facility. Included with that was a community room that could serve multiple purposes, including possibility of even a future council meeting. It was going to have the necessary technology to be able to host public meetings. That was one of the primary components that wasn't required, but it was a key element of the facility in terms of furthering the brand of the police department as a community policing organization. But also starting to provide the training room because the training space wasn't built into the station. The station itself was largely offices, and there is some opportunity to, I think, relook at the costs. Though we even before bringing it forward, we went through that exercise and we pared down a number of things to try to reduce the costs. And it just seemed to be kind of like we got to where it was there's some policy questions around the temporary holding facilities. I think that was the only thing that was kind of a big question, which might reduce costs somewhere for a facility like this of about $1 million. But since that time, we've also seen these cost escalation factors across the board with lumber, steel, everything, which is you're kind of fighting tailwinds with inflation. Costs just continue to go up. But really, at this point, it's do we want to re-engage with the architects to kind of do some more design work and try to see if there's some opportunity to reduce costs, firm up that number, and then work with the community, or do we want to try to build support first and then go back and kind of revisit. I think it would be good if we want to move forward to re-engage with the architects that we were pretty far along, and have the ad hoc committee actually sit down with the architectural team to ask some of the questions, because it's a combination of technical issues, some being policy issues that we can give feedback on, and then what some of the things you asked are, can this be eliminated or is this required, and if it's eliminated, how do we move forward? So I guess that kind of lays out some options for us.
Well, I think, the driving force behind it and the head of it, of course, would be Chief Ferguson. So, I'd be interested in what you think, and you've had the chance to review those plans. We spent a lot of money with the architect. I kind of remember that. It was an ouch type bill, but I don't. Maybe along with that, I'd like to see if we could get a copy of the blueprints and plans for the Katati station. That was single story. That was had plenty of room. I don't know if you've had a chance to tour it. I did a number of years ago when the mayors and council members meeting was down there. But yeah, I think and the EOC is not going to be part of the new one. Is that correct?
Well, that was kind of the thinking around the community room was, we were trying to be as creative as possible and looking at what are all the potential uses. So that included, could serve as a council chambers, training room, but also the EOC, because really we designed all that into that, and it'd be very much like the EOC space at the fire station. Because it could serve all of you just gotta have things lock cabinets.
Yeah. Well, I distinctly remember when we funded through the redevelopment agency, the fire station. We really jumped on board with the EOC because that was going to be the EOC for the entire city, even the police department. And now I understand there's maybe some that maybe wasn't etched into the contract that we signed with the fire district. But that could technically be used by the police department.
And we do that.
Yeah.
I mean, currently that's what exists.
Yes, I know. And I'd like to see that continue because that would save a tremendous amount of money on the building of the new station. Unless I've got it all wrong.
No, to David's point, that was kind of the built-in part of that community center. So by not necessarily going with that at this moment, maybe a different phase, you'd be looking exclusively at a police facility phase, phase one. Just only that, not the community center, which was definitely have like a EOC capacity.
Well, I'm sure the mayor remembers when that, police station was constructed for, I think it was $7 million. The city council really took a beating for spending that much money.
The fire station.
The fire station now, you know, we'd love to spend that.
Yeah. And we, you know, as part of the process, when we were looking at the design, we did a tour of the Cotty station with a former chief steward. And the architects actually who built Cotty, or who designed the Cotty station, were ultimately the architects we chose, and the layout actually is very similar. So it incorporated, it was almost, with the exception of a couple of things, it was fairly close in style and design. You know, they have different elements, of course, that they put on it, but to the Cotty station. So it did incorporate a lot of that. It was one story. We were originally looking at possibility of 2-story with some stations. But what we did do is include an area on the site plan for a potential new city hall. And in order to accommodate a new city hall, that would be 2-story. And within the footprint that was identified. There is other considerations because you still have to ensure that the police station is a secure facility that doesn't allow for all the same access that you would grant to City Hall, but that could be done if you know, thoughtfully with the design, realizing that in the future there may be a City Hall, it would just be created really as kind of a separate building add-on, but not something with a bunch of open doors and connections.
So Chief, what are your thoughts? Well, I guess what's the next step? The mayor just said
That would be my first step, is to see what's the interest, what's the possibility, because quite honestly, we've gone down this path of doing these designs, spending that money, and if we go back to this and do it again, are we gonna be in the same boat now? If the community said this isn't something we're gonna stand behind, I think we may have an issue. So my take is we look to see if there's an interest in whether or not we can get some funding and see what opportunities are out there.
Well, you know, if we go to the private sector for funding, which ultimately I think we're going to have to, we get that community buy-in. They're going to want to see what they're going to buy.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to want to see blueprints and designs and.
The thing I see is I'm going to buy a car. I'm not going to go on the internet, pick out the kind of car I want, and then go see if I can afford it. I'm going to see what I can afford, and then go out and design around that. And so what I would like to do is, that's why I've been asking for the bonding capacity, because if it's 20 million or if it's 60 million, it's a big difference in what you can get. And then you go for the interest out, the community interest from there to say, hey, look, we have a building, it's approximately, 20 million. This is what it will cost you per year over 15 years. Move forward. I mean, it's not a big hit for a community member when you lay it out for 54 million bucks. You're talking $100 a year for a person. It's not that bad. So we need to find out what that capacity is that we have to see if we can even afford it in the first place. And if so, then you design around what money you really truly need to spend.
And I think one of the things we have to make sure we've established it, and that's the need. The community needs to understand that there is a need. And, I guess the way they did it in Hillsburg was they opened it up on a Saturday and had everybody come through and saw the facility and,
I'm fairly confident this community is fully aware of what we're at.
At least about 3%.
Its needs. But yeah, I mean, those are all great points.
okay, so then we're gonna put it back on staff to come up with some type of a bonding capacity in USDA grants with President Biden's stimulus package, maybe. And we are a rural community, so. Good. Good. Okay, I see no hands out in the audience, so why don't we go ahead and move on to TOT, transit and occupancy tax.
Well, this item is kind of related to our ongoing issues with the Oaks Motel. And we did complete an audit that showed some discrepancies in with what they're paying. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is potentially amending our zoning code to shorten the length of stay that someone could have at any given motel in town, to really get at the fact that the motel is being used as permanent occupancy. And so there is, within the code, there is a way forward for them to take that leap to, like an SRO. It requires a use permit at the planning commission, but you can't have half of it SRO, half of it, overnight stay. And so they would have to make a commitment to, changing the whole motel to permanent occupancy, which would require building permit, building issues and building code amendments, or not code amendments, but they would have to modify the rooms in order to meet the code, to meet the stay for over 30 days. This is the code section here. So really it just says no one shall stay in a room over 30 days. And so we could amend that to shorten it. I mean, there's really a game being played where someone checks out and comes back in, and so we're seeing that in the TOT audit as well, where he's exempting a large portion of his income, saying that they're staying over 30 days. But on the other side of the coin, the zoning doesn't allow for that. So we're just kind of seeking direction. I mean, one option is we could amend this code section to say 30 days, we could make it say 10 days. But we were kind of thinking maybe there might be a little bit of a carve out there for emergency services, that sometimes a fire crew had to stay longer or something like that. So we could probably come up with something there. So that would just be one more way to sort of get at this issue with the Oaks Motel. It wouldn't be that big of a change. We probably would have to let the hotels know that we're considering this and give them an opportunity to weigh in on it. So that's, I don't know, Dave, unless you had something else.
Well, I think you covered it. I think the 30-day time frame probably ties in, because anytime a resident occupies something for 30 days, you can sort of have tenant rights. So that tends to be the kind of time frame for non-residential guests, because over 30 days you start to become almost a tenant, become a tenant right. So part of it is to protect the lodging themselves. But what we see is I think for lack of a better term, maybe some misuse of the exemptions, and where even despite the 30 days, they're claiming they're residential users and therefore not subject to TOT. So therefore, we're not getting paid the TOT that should be applicable. It wouldn't be applicable if they had gone through necessarily gone through the process to seek residential, legitimately from the city for some of those hotel spaces. There are examples in the county where certain hotels have been used for residential purposes or certain portions, but again, that's done through a specific process where the city explicitly grants that authority and provides, addresses the issues associated with that use. So parking being one, more management being another one, food prep and those kinds of things, along with what kind of interior code, what is the code trigger in terms of improvements and life safety features, food prep, and
There are things
laundry.
in the building code, if you're in there over 30 days, they have to make changes, and I can't remember what they are exactly, but.
So included in your in the packet is a copy of our chapter 3.44 of our transit occupancy tax. It does say exemptions are not allowed for non-residential hotels. So it appears again, we have a hotel that's been using exemptions, and we are rectifying that through the code enforcement process. The other option would be to consider reducing the 30-day stay timeframe to a lesser timeframe, which is would be more of an amendment to the zoning versus I have to look at check the 3.44 to see if it has any reference to the 30 days.
I mean, this is all or nothing, so if you go through this, then you're all SRO, single room occupancy, full time. I mean, I don't know if they're just throwing it out there, there could be where we could change that so you could do half. I don't know if that's even,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you. Why does it have to be? all?
well, I mean, it doesn't, I don't think it has to, it just says in here, you know, it's all or nothing. So you go through use permit, then you're all residential. So I don't know, we could come up with some stuff and bring it back to the next one, or we can move.
Well,
forward if that's the-
let's see if we can give you some direction on that. Mr. Mayor, do you think that's just one?
They explained it very well, and I've been pushing on this because I think this business is skating and trying to cheat the system. I spend a lot of time watching them shift people in and out on first of the month around then. And they're working hard to not pay us the money that they have for a motel in the middle of our town. And so it needs to be a lower number of days allowed to stay, in my opinion, without emergency services. I'm sorry, with an exemption for emergency services.
So how much TOT tax are we talking in the big, like, just ballpark?
I think that answer your question, Chair, would be sensitive to not providing, disclosing any.
Is it over 10,000 a year?
In DOT?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Not payment, not payment.
Yeah.
Now, what do they pay right now versus what should they be paying right now for not for every room full, because it says no vacancy?
Yeah, well, maybe it's better, I'll just tell you what they're on the hook for.
Mhm.
They're on the hook for about 27,000. That's based on their exemptions that they indicated that apply because of due to residential use of the properties.
You know, and I guess just a couple quick questions. Would the fire district get in there and inspect those rooms prior to it being flipped to a,
Yes, and they have been out there at our request, probably about, I don't know, it was a few years ago. And they didn't find anything egregious in terms of short-term occupancy, they were okay. But long-term, they would have to get a building permit and then.
Yeah, you know, and then the question is, why not let them do half and half? You know, I don't want to see that 27,000 go away. I mean, he owes it under this current operational guidelines that he needs to pay it, as far as I'm concerned. But maybe we can do half and half if he wants that. But he's got to apply to the planning commission either way to change it to even half and half.
Well,
And he's been advised, the property owner has been
over
advised.
and over again.
Yeah, and well, then maybe it's time to bring out a bigger hammer and let them know that.
Well, that's what we're doing with this code enforcement letter regarding the TOT.
Okay.
We've been over there, the code enforcement officer's been there, inspected it, we found some things, garbage, we've addressed that kind of stuff. But nothing getting at the heart of the issue, which is skirting this 30-day not paying our tax, and
Well, that
it
means.
always says no vacancy too. Which is-
Yes, well, that leads into my next part is what's that gonna look like? What's that footprint of that hotel gonna look like if he flips it all to residential? I mean, I know what it looks like if you go down the Citrus, I'm sorry, down the Vets Building driveway there, back to the Citrus Fair, and you see the back of those buildings. You catch it in the spring or in the summertime when there's guys out there cooking on hot plates and that's what have you, barbecuing outside with this much room. So I'm not sure what it's gonna look like. It's gonna be a dump. You know, I come up and down 101, as I'm sure we all do, and more of the vineyards are building these housing units. Yeah, and that's what we're creating here for the vineyard workers.
And it does have some guidance, you know, the use permits, the planning commission shall consider parking, private and public open space provided for occupants. There's a few things in here, but it's not a lot, but.
Well, when we have a property owner who is non-compliant with the basics, it's gonna be difficult to do anything for him and expect him to step up to the plate and all of a sudden make it look nice. That's our core downtown right
I
there.
don't know.
You know, there's Pick's, there's the old library, you know, hopefully someday right across the street in the shiny building will be something. He backs up to that property that was just sold. Yeah, and I know what that guy wants to do. I mean, we gotta get his attention, but,
We can make some changes and bring it back here, or if it's more urgent, we can take direction today and start the planning commission process.
I mean, it should be noted, I think, you know, as we pointed out, there's current really a violation of our zoning code and resulting in underpayment of appropriate, what we consider appropriate taxes. The you know, the reduction in the timeframe, it is, you know, one solution, but you know, we still might be stuck with the issue of, if they're not compliant, they may still continue to be non compliant. You know, revising the 30-day might be something that we want to do a little bit of outreach with our other hotels, just to make sure, you know, there's no issues for them. But that would be, you know, your direction if you'd like us to, you know, reduce that time frame. We do see, I think, you know, there are periods of times when, you know, it seems like it's, I call it public safety, but you get sometimes CAL FIRE in there. You get groups like who are maybe doing a bunch of tree work or something. So, you know, making sure that we're not accepting something that we really do want to stay here. And so anyway, it's just something to be aware of.
yeah, and those groups, David, usually stay down in Purple Plaza. You see the trucks parked there, the parking lot outside of that hotel. Nobody wants to stay there.
Right.
And my big concern too, you know, is potential liability for the city. God forbid a fire swept through there and we lost some human life and a couple of that back buildings, rooms were destroyed. And what can we do? How do we enforce that? We sent them letters. Well, you know, I mean, it's bad on us.
Right. I was just pointing out the 30-day provision just because it will apply to all hotels, not just them. So
So if we did 10 days or some other number.
Why shouldn't we accommodate him? Let him come in front of, well, he's gonna come in front of the plan.
Well, we would initiate this code change so that we can go after him a little bit more, I would describe it. So, yeah, I mean, if we do 10 days, I think David's saying we want to make sure that all the other hotel owners are aware that 10 days might be the maximum or whatever.
right, no one can stay at their hotel for longer.
Nobody can stay more than 10 days.
Without a first responder emergency intervention.
Or yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
And
and if they do, then what? Then they flip to where he doesn't owe any TOT tax on that.
Meaning well, we have to write it such a way they can't stay there for longer than 10 days at any hotel.
And then the other thing would be, do we want to allow some conversion of some of the rooms? And that's something we could talk more about,
But that's,
I'm guiding no on that myself. So,
yeah.
but I'm open to hear.
Well, I just didn't want to see us lose TOT tax, but apparently we're not getting it anyhow.
Well, that's what has been bothering me about this is he's skirting the system to not pay us. And I think that we'd be giving him these rooms for him to make money and us not. Versus, I mean, that time says no vacancy for a decade now.
Yeah. I'm not so sure it works, but that's okay. So I don't know. So you seem to think reducing that to 10 days would give us more teeth in compliance.
I still think he's gonna do what he's doing, but I think it does give us a little more teeth.
Yeah, but you can't keep doing what we're doing, because like I said, if there's a fire there, people get killed. I could see the reporters out in front of Pick saying, how could you let this go on?
Well, I mean, we did do an inspection. We can do another inspection. We should do that too. Fire.
I'd ask the fire guys to get in there and take a look, you know, now we're hitting the cold weather, who knows what kind of portable heaters they're gonna have in there and all that crap.
I'll initiate that. And again, we did that probably 3 years ago.
Yeah.
The building and fire, but
Chief, any thoughts?
no thoughts on that.
How's police response to that? Well,
We, to my knowledge, we don't have a bunch of calls. So
No.
it's not something.
okay, and that's not what I'm expecting, I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, no, not a lot of, and then I'm not even sure my folks would even understand all the working parties taking place there, right? Nobody's calling us to say folks aren't leaving, folks are there, folks are.
Well, we did have an issue with, Claudia Clow. But now I understand she's running to the group as well, so, and the only one else that's gonna complain is,
Jen,
David, the guy that owns Holt. Dave Holt, and, who knows what he's gonna do. But they had a kitchen back there, I guess that kitchen is still running,
they did get a building permit for that kitchen.
so they have a full-blown kitchen.
They do. They do.
And we looked at that very carefully,
Yes.
because again, it's zone commercial, so. The zoning code provided for allowing. Ancillary kitchen facilities as part of it, as a hotel, because it's.
There was no way to say no to it. I mean, that was, and we looked, and, so.
Well, Squeaky Wheel is now, has got her own boilers. She was the one complaining about the kitchen. So, well, I'd really like to see us, go ahead then and shorten the stay period after we do our homework on it, and then just get the fire district over there and do some type of heavy enforcement on his violations. Red tag him.
I mean, the violations were related to trash, so there really wasn't any building code stuff, at least in the last go around. We'll see again, if that's still the case, but. A lot of the code violations, they weren't related to anything that was safety, but it was stuff like garbage and things.
Well, I know,
Yeah.
not to talk about me, but on my rentals, every year, they gotta have their smoke detectors and carbon monoxide, and that's a state law now. I'm sure he doesn't have fire detectors and carbon monoxide.
Okay, well, I'll initiate the inspection and then also the code change.
So with the audit that was done, the TOT tax should have been paid versus what was, or
We have a letter drafted, we just needed to make an amendment to the audit so that they were they jive with each other, and so that letter can go out this week.
So we're gonna, and with our new code enforcement process, we're gonna be pretty aggressive in enforcing. The requirement of paying TOT, not allowing those exemptions.
Yeah. Well, and you look at 27,000, that's 10% TLT. What's that mean? He did $270,000 in room rentals. I seriously doubt that. But.
And we did see all the numbers and it's part of our auditor, and look down, we can't just. Try and be careful about disclosing them.
how many rooms are there?
I forget, there's quite a few, I want to say 60 something. But I don't know, it's not my head.
We used to have people check out in the middle of the night and come over to my B&B of mine.
Because it was so loud.
Because of the rats in the walls that can run around.
So if there was no vacancy for 365 days a year at the cheapest rate in town, or cheapest rate in the state, you're looking at $5 million a year. I mean, you do the math off of it real easy.
Yeah, but
So we're not getting
I don't know.
$5 million.
I don't know if you could back into that number based on the fact the sign wasn't.
No, absolutely not. But that's why I look at the book. I want, real audits on this and push it to find out, because this is the center of our town. This is something that we should be more proud of and should not be allowing him to take advantage of us.
And I'm not saying those guys are disrespectful. They're not sitting out on the sidewalk on Cloverdale Boulevard drinking beer, or hooting and hollering. I mean, they're hardworking individuals and, it is.
If he was paying his TOT, we probably wouldn't be complaining about this right now.
Well, we wouldn't know about it,
Right.
Well, it's a dorm.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
supposed to be.
exactly what it is. Those guys work hard and somebody's got to look out for their safety to some extent.
So at this time, we're here, the subcommittee's recommendation is to revise the length of stay from 30 to 10. The other section that allows for conversion is more complex. And I guess that's a question, do you want that? Maybe we bring back a draft ordinance, workshop it with council, then it goes back to planning commission.
We should, well, why does it have to be complex?
Well, I just, because it involves changing. It's beyond, it's easy to change 30 to 10 days.
Yeah,
It's
you want-
changing, it's again, you're changing the zoning, commercial zoning for all hotels to, right now, any hotel can apply for residential use.
Right.
You would, if the direction is to direct staff to revise the zoning ordinance to not allow for that, to take away that allowance, meaning he couldn't, this property owner would not even by way of zoning have the authority to ask for that. Right now, they have the authority in the zoning code.
Well, we want them to ask for it,
Yeah,
Oh,
we'll just keep all that the same, we just changed it from 30 to.
the number of days.
Yeah,
But we'll,
And then he has to apply to the planning commission to change
right,
his use permit.
yeah, if he wants to go permanent residential.
Yeah.
Use permit.
And it's nothing, apply by a certain day or put a red tag on the door. I mean,
And we've sent him this.
Yeah.
Countless times.
okay. And I'm sure we have registered mail requested and documented.
He just doesn't wanna commit to that, because he knows the building code's gonna cost him money and all of those things.
Well, how, you're not referring just to the application fee. To the planning commission,
Oh, that would be, oh, that's minimal. It would be, okay, now we're converting this motel to residential, you have to submit a building permit to meet all these code requirements, that's the big money.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants to,
You know, then you get into Title 24, you get into all,
it's a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, then maybe he doesn't apply and he just starts paying his DOT.
well, really what we want is the activity to cease.
Yeah.
He's claiming an exemption for which he doesn't have approval to claim.
And if he doesn't have the approval and he can't claim the exemption, then we get more TOT tax. And technically, people have to be out of there,
or we close them down. You got that.
so. But I think this is the first step, but.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I see no hands raised, so why don't we go ahead and move on to discussion about Orange Drive parking enforcement. Chief, we have a letter from you or.
Yeah, I'll handle this one, Chair. So this was put on the agenda as a result of some complaints that we received from residents on there about parking, particularly like in private driveways and other. I went back and looked at about a 3-year report on RIMS. I didn't find a whole lot of calls, but most recently we have received some. I know the mayor is very familiar with this because he was also contacted regarding a specific vehicle that was blocking a private driveway that was reported to us. One of the problems that we have with this is that it's actual private, it's not city owned, it's not city maintained. So it really kind of creates an issue for us in the enforcement aspect of this. So the last call that the mayor informed me of was a resident who had their vehicle in, there's an apartment complex there, it's only a couple of units, but it's number 10. And somebody had a vehicle that was originally stolen, that was recovered from the Bay Area, brought here, dropped on the property, just so happened to be in this person's area, was kind of problematic. We were able to come out, take a look. Initially, we're going to try to get a hold of somebody to move it, but we ultimately ran tag under the ADA because it was determined that part of the location where that car was located was the county. So that's how we handled that. However, moving forward, I thought it was best to at least notify and send a letter to all the residents there to educate them, because unfortunately, when they call, they kind of get the idea that we're not doing anything, when in reality, it's because legally, we can't do anything. But we do try to go out, and I know there's been another instance where we go out and try to talk to them about how to either get a hold of an owner, leave a note, or try to do something. So the letter was really, the point here of sending it to all the tenants there, letting them know where we stand on this, what we can and can't do. But then I also advise that if there are some vehicles left abandoned there, to contact us and we'll deal with it through ADA, which by the way, the city does reap the benefits of that. We do get reimbursed from the county for that, which is great. But hopefully this will kind of remedy, because I can't help but think that people who live there have friends come over. And it's those folks that just decide to park wherever they want. So hopefully this letter kind of gives the idea of the owners, look, you know, we want to make sure to respect others' driveways. We want to make sure to respect other people's property when it comes to this. So the mayor reaching out to me is, let's have a discussion on how we can remedy this. So the letter was the first step. I think number two was really trying to research and look into what, if there's anything that we can do. And the only thing that I found that I might have to, I want to just confirm that we're in the right. Under the vehicle code section 22,500 E1, it does state that no person can park, leave standing any vehicle in front of a public or private driveway. And it does give an exception for a bus that's unloading, a school bus or taxi cab. I think the only question that I would have, and I want to make sure that we were covered under a legal standing, is whether or not that can be from also a private roadway. So we're not just dealing with a private driveway, but we're also dealing with a private roadway that's not maintained by the city, as far as the vehicle code is concerned. So I may have some concerns with that, on whether or not that's something we can enforce from a ticket standpoint. This letter kind of helps address too, if somebody were to come and leave a vehicle abandoned in their driveway, we would come in there and educate them on the trespassing process. We would first, try to notify the owner of the vehicle and try to address it that way. But ultimately, it could come a time where can't get a hold of the owner, person needs to get out. Some tow issues might have to come in there. And at this point, because it's private, it falls on the homeowner's responsibility to tow that. So unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we can do to change that. And I think that puts the city in liability if we do try to enforce that. All the owner has to do is come back and say, hey, that's private property. You have no legal authority to do that.
What did you mean when you said part of it's in the county?
So when Teresa and Lieutenant Parker went out there on the call we're talking about, where this vehicle was dumped off out there, and it happened to be in a spot on that apartment complex that this tenant was saying was her spot. Well, we kind of went out there and explained that we can't control what marked designated spots you have at this. You need to get a hold of the owner. Turns out when Teresa went out there, the backside of this property apparently is not in our jurisdiction. So because the vehicle was in that area, we were able to use under ABA. So I'm going by her expertise in ABA because she's been doing it for a while and we've had no problems with it. So that's kind of where that stood on that. So
And the property's funny shaped, it's a private, there's actually a city chunk in it. I don't know if it's some type of lift station or what it is, because it's a small little, and then some county in it as well.
I'm trying to think how that ties into the property off of Bush Street. As you head out towards Ashley Road, just before you go under the overpass on the left-hand side, it goes up there, because we had complaints before about people blocking driveways. And
but is that city owned, that area you're talking about?
I think it was, I don't know whether it is or it isn't.
Yeah. This one's just particularly complicated because the section of Bush Drive is private. It's not the city. So that kind of really makes a challenge for us. So I'm hoping this first step, the letter kind of helps address that. And again, I've been looking at different kind of vehicle code situations that may be applicable, but it's really hard when it's private property.
Very great area.
Yeah, very great.
I was talking to David and Kevin this morning, because I don't know the answer, and I was gonna bring them up to you today. When you have private property that's open to the public, how does that change? Like a raised parking lot where they want a stop sign there, you can legally.
Those are done by ordinance and signed, posted in the actual parking lot. So that was considered too, where that's a different scenario where they could legally post those. Now, could that happen in that area? I don't have an answer to that. Perhaps we'd have to look to see if that is an option, because and the other difference is there's a term in the vehicle code called an off-street parking facility, which defines raised to a T. And in order to be able to enforce anything there, it must be by signage, by ordinance. For instance, there's like stop sign, if you come out of that parking lot, right, it has to be done and signed and posted in there. Otherwise, somebody doesn't have to stop at all. They just run right out of that race without ever having to stop. So there's those that separate that from the situation we're talking about. I've never addressed or dealt with this type of situation where, for the most part, if you look at the street, it appears to have curb and a sidewalk, but it's not. It's not a city owned, it's just concrete on each side that comes out but then stops. But there's no curb to it, there's no gutters to it, there's no, it's not a curb sidewalk kind of situation. So it's kind of confusing, if you will. I understand why people are calling. But hopefully this letter kind of does identify a little bit of that, what our challenges are and how to maybe help try to offset some of the complaints. Since then, we have not received a single complaint, and looking at the streets, it looks like they're clear. It's not to say it's gonna happen again.
Yeah. The next question I had, if you don't mind real quick, go, please. The way it's laid out, I think it was, the street was owned by somebody, and then there's like 3 houses that were owned by other people. Did we get a trespass request form, whatever I don't remember what this Cloverdale calls them, so that authorization form for you to tow if need, and have that owner of that street area sign it instead of having one from each homeowner and they're responsible. Now you have the authority of one of the people calls it, they're blocking my driveway, whatever.
Do we know who the owner of that street is?
It's on the GPS or GIS mapping that we had the name of it. It was a different name than the owners of the houses.
So one of the challenges,
It's really weird.
one of the challenges I see is, and maybe I'll just look into this a little deeper. Usually in a circumstance like that, the individual requesting the tow must have the ability to pay for it up front, right? Which is somewhat of a problem if that person doesn't live here, is not from here. Because then ultimately, if we did tow that, we're liable for that until we receive otherwise. But I have a little bit of concern about running into, if the person doesn't pay, where are we at? Because technically, would we have done it correctly under his authority if he's not paying? So there are some questions that we need to look at that. I have no problem if it's parked in a driveway, then that owner can simply say, right, we need this tow. Now, we're not gonna tow it under our authority. We'll help you get a tow, whatever. They're gonna have to be the ones that deal with it and then go after the registered owner later. So, but as far as on that section of the street,
It's so weird.
yeah, we'd have to probably really look into that. And I would even probably say we need to contact Jose and say, what does this look like? Can we do this? Is even something that can be able in circumstances. So
Yeah, that's right. That's the street is the only thing the guy owns. It's nothing, no properties. It's really weird. Yeah.
Maybe judges. Well, it sounds to me like this is resolved. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think for the time
Yeah,
being,
it is. Nice letter,
Yes,
and
thank
I
you.
think it explains our position very well. So, let's consider this put to bed, and we'll wait for it to surface again.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Steve. All right, following along here, we already took our number 5, the appointment of a Sonoma County Library Commissioner. Let's talk about increasing the city manager's spending authority.
Okay, so under the,
I'll be right back.
oh, you gotta go, we'll take a break.
Oh, why don't we take a 5-minute break, Michael?
Okay.
I already know this. That's okay. Sure. Okay, we're going to reconvene the subcommittee meeting, and we're going to go to item number 6, increasing the city manager's spending authority.
Okay, this agenda item was referred from the Public Works Subcommittee. This came about in relationship to the purchase of chipper and a dump truck, and Councilmember Paula recommended the agenda item be considered by the Finance Admin and Police to increase the city manager's spending authorization. Currently, the city manager's authorization stands at $25,000. And so anything within that limit, the ability to approve without council, explicit council authority. Anything above that in terms of a single purchase does require prior council approval. What that means is that anything that costs more than 25,000 is necessary to bring to council for formal approval. By increasing the authority, it would just mean that the city manager would have authority. It would just increase the spending limit, if you will, without explicit council approval. By increasing the authority, what it does not do, it doesn't necessarily give the authority to sign all contracts, because that does still reside as a council authority, specifically construction contracts that are go out to bid, because those have to be awarded by council for the most part. There is still a number of things where the current purchasing process or the awarding process does require council authority. So this really does would by increasing would allow for more flexibility in approving purchasing by the city manager. I did have a discussion with our city attorney today about that. Based on his experience in working with other cities, where he sees most of this authority lies right around that $50,000 limit. And that's if subcommittee is inclined to recommend this, I'd probably recommend increasing it to that amount, especially given that, you know, we've seen a lot of inflation and it's hard to do a lot of business under the current limit. I know kind of the request was to increase it kind of to up to the amount that's in the budget. But you know, some real caution in doing that, because despite it being budgeted, a lot of things do come back to council for review and input, even though it's in the budget. And you know, I always try to use some wisdom to consider when to bring those things forward, even though they may not be explicitly required to do so. You know, there are some benefits to continuing to have the council weigh in on spending decisions, even if they are within the city manager's authority. Just transparency and kind of just good oversight. So anyways, that's kind of the context in which to look at this issue. I think it would be beneficial to kind of set it up to increase it from 25 to 50. If you want to do something beyond that, I think it just kind of weigh some big issues around transparency, council oversight, and you know, whether you know, you feel really comfortable in you know, what that limit looks like, whether it's at the budgeted amounts or something less. And you know, some of the items in the budget can be pretty significant, so that limit could be up there. And that's kind of a question for council if you really want to, you know, grant that full authority.
Mayor?
I'm in agreement. Simple.
50.
I think that's more than fair.
50,000. You know, I also agree, but you know, this came to the Public Works Subcommittee. Councilmember Paul brought it up. Not to speak for him, but he's of the opinion that if an item like the wood chipper, for example, is already approved in the budget and it's over your signing authority, that in itself is prior city council approval.
Correct.
So, but I also understand where you're coming from. It's kind of like transparency. I want everybody to know what I'm doing. You know, I just want to cover all my bases. So I'm okay with increasing it to 50,000. I'm also okay with increasing it to a budgeted item. Maybe with a cap on that of a certain dollar amount, but if you're comfortable with that, David, that's fine. And I totally get it. If you want to cover your ass, for lack of a better term, just put it on there. I don't care if it's for 5,000, whatever you think.
And that's how I looked at it this morning when I was talking about it with you. This, if David feels comfortable, I want it as efficient as possible, but I want him to feel comfortable as well and have it be transparent.
Yep.
So I think that he'll have things that he doesn't need to bring to us. If we want to say something in there that says prior budgeted items, things like that, prior council approved, that's fine. But if you don't feel comfortable with them, then you can bring it to us anyways. And that can be a good reason to do it. It's transparency.
And there may be other mechanisms we can build into the process. For instance, when we approve the budget, explicitly state, okay, you know, we want to move forward quickly. It's you have the authority to move forward on these items, right, right now, so that way it's done. It's just a matter of kind of spelling that out front, because I think, as with anything, sometimes purchases. Council members look at it and they think, well, I want to weigh in on that for whatever policy reason, and, I don't want to, do something and have to be questioned if rather work that out ahead of time, so that's always the kind of consideration that I'm kind of looking at. Okay. All right,
so what are you gonna do? Bring a resolution back?
Yeah, I think with the direction, I'll coordinate with the city attorney on a resolution. We'll see if we can find the original resolution and update that accordingly.
Okay. How about the Bay Rim water upgrades dashboard?
Yeah, so one of the is council authorized staff to implement the BayRIN, which is a water upgrade program, which is an on-bill financing program. As part of that program, BayRIN has established a dashboard that's for Cloverdale that shows how many customers have enrolled to date, how many maybe didn't proceed, how many were completed, how many assessments were done, and then what the current amount of on-bill charges are to pay any outstanding assessments for the purchases, along with some other data regarding estimated annual water savings in gallons, and kind of some marketing data around how do customers find out about the program or become interested in the program. So this dashboard is available, and just wanted to bring it to the what we're seeing is that some of the things residents are financing tend to be low cost items like high efficiency toilets, in some cases new shower heads or sink aerators. To some of the charges on their bills tend to be relatively low. It's in a couple of dollars per month. Again, it's an optional program. It's really just there for residents who maybe in some cases I might look at it and think it's much more simple for folks to just incur the expense and buy the new toilet. But again, it's a program and folks feel like it's beneficial to go through it. It kind of turnkey because they help with the contractors. They kind of help do all that process of getting it installed and actually looking with the customer based on their water use, how much water they're going to be saving. So anyways, it really just kind of the report that there is a dashboard, a copy of it's available in the packet. Take a look at, and periodically we'll get reports and we can share this with the council just as a status update.
Good, thank you. Mr. Mayor, anything?
No, sir.
Okay, why don't we move on to Chief? I guess you're up with the officer hiring.
Yeah, not much to report here. There's a memorandum I handed out to you that kind of outlines where we're at with the 10th officer position. If you recall, back on May 25th, council approved a 4-1 vote to hire a 10th officer. With the part of that hinged, of course, from the
Sharon, we have a hand. I want to make sure that it was probably the last item it's in there.
So I show that.
Chair?
Yeah, please.
Hi, thank you. Jane Elias again. David, thank you for posting the dashboard for the water upgrade save. I just have a couple of questions. Number one, is the city happy with the results of what's going on? And number two, on the bottom of the dashboard, it talks about ownership and the customers that own or rent. And I couldn't tell from that any data of, did it differentiate between owners and renters on that dashboard? I didn't see it. So that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, Ms. Elias. I'll have to follow up. I don't see that specifically on whether that breakdown of ownership type, whether it's own or rent. So I'll check in on that.
okay, Jane?
You're still right on.
Oh. So you'll get back to Jane on that, David? Okay, my apologies, I didn't see your hand, I fell into complacency with, thinking nobody was, in their hand, so you got me. All right, Chief, I'm sorry, the 10th officer?
No worries, yeah, and I'll just bump ahead. If you recall that you approved 4-1 for a 10th officer position. We immediately went to creating a flyer and putting it at all the sites that we knew of, and platforms to get the job out there to the public. We did not receive any applicants. As a result, that came back to council on August 24th. To seek a hiring incentive. Common practice in this county, a lot of agencies were using hiring incentives to try to entice qualified applicants. Since that time, unfortunately, we've only received 2 applicants since that time, neither of which are qualified for immediate hire. One is a former retired officer from the Bay Area, multitude of years of experience, but not qualified because they would need a post update. So they've been out of the business for quite some time. I think that individual was ideally suited for a level 1, but may not necessarily be suited for a full-time police officer position that we're talking about. And then the second is not qualified because they have not had the police academy. So this brings us to where we're at right now, and the purpose of this memo is to see if the city would be interested in actually seeking out a police recruit. Basically what this is, and this is also happening at all levels in other county agencies, they are sending people to the academy, waiting for them to get out of the academy. They're already hired. When they go into the academy, and they're what's called sponsored. They would be sponsored by us. And I think it's important to note here, there is no additional cost to the city for this position. If you recall, those hiring incentives were supposed to be for new officers and or lateral. Well, this person wouldn't even qualify for that because they're a recruit. They haven't even gone to the academy. So the savings from hiring somebody in the hiring incentive is already saved right there. So there would be a little bit of expense in the academy, which is $3,294 plus $60 parking pass. That in itself is not reimbursable, but post would reimburse for any per diem. So because we would be hiring this individual, they'd be subject to all of the other things that an employee would be. So here the per diem may be up to $50 a day, $5,000 over the term of the academy, which would be reimbursable to us. Now that number may not be exact because that's factoring in driving distance from the police academy, because they would pay for meals and travel time. So it may not be that high, but just know that I know another agency that's what they're getting for sending a recruit back. That's their reimbursement, which is a pretty good amount. As far as providing them a vehicle, that's issued per MOU already. We have an unmarked they take to and from. Because they're basically paid the whole time they're in there. So uniforms are issued per the MOU. They would wear our uniform in the academy instead of the police academy uniforms. So they'd be issued those within the MOU language of what they're given. And one of the things that I think is critical here is if this were to be the case and we were to find somebody and this was going to happen, I would think it'd be in the best interest of the city to seek a 3-year contract for this. Now, there's been a lot of discussions about whether or not these contracts are legitimate, and I will tell you from speaking from experience, they are to a degree. You can't recoup all the costs of the academy, but you certainly can recoup costs that were relative to per diem and things like that. And the reason I know that is because I've done these contracts before, and I have come after an individual and got the money back. Who decided to test for another organization while in the process of doing this under a 3-year contract, right? It's not the greatest thing to do, but at the same token, we want to make sure that if we're going to pay for this, we want to make sure we get the services for the 3 years that we're asking. And if you were to test for Sonoma because you thought it paid better or something, then I think it's appropriate that we seek the funding back to the degree in which we can. It has been successful, and I looked to have a contract with similar language that I know has worked in the past. But I think honestly, I think we're at this point right now with not getting any other
applicants, and there is an individual who applied for us, that according to Lieutenant Parker, he knows would probably be ideal for this. He just doesn't have the academy. He's currently employed over at Mendocino County Jail. I think his father or he lived here. So there is somebody that has already applied that may be eligible for that.
Is this the one that you were referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's one of the ones.
There's one, yes, there is an applicant there that would qualify for this, assuming they pass the background. All of those things have to happen prior to being hired, right? And then the only reasonable time that we can get them into the police academy would be the July 1 academy. There's no possible way to get this done by January's academy. We still have to go through the testing process, of course, the hiring
Background
process.
check.
Oh, yeah, and that's 30 to 60 days out. And then you have a psych, a medical, all these things that have to go with that. So at the quickest we could do all this, even if the person was hired prior to the academy, we could bring them in, start getting them working on the policy review, getting them set up with our policies online, and making sure that they're getting all of that admin stuff out of the way prior to attending the academy. So I'm bringing this for you today because I think that's the avenue we need to go. I'd be seeking, I want to bring this forward. Of course, looks that you support it. I think that's where we're at.
The MOU, it covers recruits separately, or how does that work?
It wouldn't, this person would be hired, but they'd be subject, they're hired as a recruit because we're sending them to the police academy, but they would be subject to the uniform. We couldn't give them any more than we give any other police officer
Right.
under the MOU. So we would treat it that way. I don't know that we want to create an extra MOU for this individual. I think there'll be language that's clearly defined about what their role is when they go to the academy. This is what they're going to need to do. You're employed by us, either, for these hours and these hours. I think there's some things we need to do as far as the groundwork there. But they would be subject to just about everything else, a police officer when it comes to the equipment.
And the per diem is very specific that they would be eligible for it.
So we would give them
Because you don't pay for lunches for the guys working right now, or per diem for.
No, we don't, but because they're going to the police academy, that's part of it, that they would get a per diem, but then we'll reimburse for that per diem. So in essence, it's gonna balance out on where it's ultimately not gonna cost us. Right, it's not gonna cost us, as I said, you're already saving on the fact that we're not paying this person a hiring incentive, which is to a person like that, brand new out of the academy, $7,500 with that 3-year period. So there's a savings there from not having to do this. And the academy is $3,294. And we would look to do the intensive, which is basically just about 6 months, 5 days a week, sometimes Saturdays. So.
The per diem is kind of like training if you send somebody to train.
Exactly.
Right, and that's why I was going to do a separate MOU, because I'm like, this is how I got hired. Is I was in the jail, I did this process, but they had a separate recruit MOU. That's why I wanted to see how that worked.
I mean, I don't think that we really need to create that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and I don't think there's any young man or woman out there that wouldn't love having the opportunity and is gonna fight, the fact that they're gonna have, MOUs protect the city and the employees and ensures what they're entitled to. I think that, we're fine doing it if we outlay it in a document maybe, but I don't know that we need to create it per se.
No, you've explained it well. I don't think we do either. I'm totally in agreement for this. This is what they did back in 05 and 06 in that area when it was short, and everybody's been hiring freezes due to the economy. So this is.
I mean, what better way to hire an employee and then send them to be trained the way you want them to, and how they're doing. But maybe I missed something. Now you said July would be the first. So if we said to someone today, okay, we'd like you to do this. When he's going to school, how does he get paid? Is he on our payroll?
So they'd be paid. We'd have to discuss that. If we were to hire him prior to July 1, yes, they would have to be.
So the city of Cloverdale would pay him while he's going to school.
As a recruit, yes. And then he's hired and he's going to the academy. We're taking him on as a new employee.
Well, I love the idea, especially if they're Cloverdalians,
Right.
like Jason. Cloverdale boy.
Yeah.
I just think that's great.
Yeah, and to your note about payment,
We don't necessarily pay him at the entry level officer because he hasn't reached that status yet, so we'd have to discuss. Something that's lesser than a police officer one, because it's not a police officer one.
Right.
Once he graduates, finishes FTO, or once he graduates, then he gets to the level one. Where step one is in the police officer, because everybody gets paid through FTO once you're hired.
Right.
So that's how that would work.
We have to create a step for him, but
We'd have to call it a police trainee, police recruit, and all the other agencies are pretty much do that same thing, so.
Well, a friend of mine, I should have thought of this before, Claudio Calvo, I think you know him, David. He does job, what do they call those things? I'm sorry?
Job training.
Job, no, he does job, where he invites all kinds of people to come to the job fair.
Oh, job fair.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And he represents the Veterans Association. So let me check with him too, to see what he has from a veteran standpoint, but have we maybe approached the kids at the high school?
well, this is how we were gonna go on a recruiting type process, right? We're gonna kind of shift gears here and try to seek out those interested in that, and with that comes a testing process.
Right.
So new law, new legislation, they have to be 1 years old by time of appointment. Now, that being said, we can send them to a police academy and they can start an academy younger than that. But at the time we bring them in as a cop, and that's basically the day after they graduate, they've got to be 21 years old before they start the job.
Could they come in at a lower level like Ed Bowen was, back when he wasn't he didn't carry a gun, they didn't have a weapon, they just helped out with traffic control and all.
Yeah, so.
Transporting people.
So here's the way I look at this. By the time we get the recruiting out there, by the time we get this out into the public and we find qualified applicants, we're obviously gonna probably get more than one in this circumstance. So we're gonna have to do a testing process. Once that testing process is done, then we're gonna have to move forward with the background. I give that at least 30 to 60 days, dependent on a lot of new legislative changes, changed even background investigations. So it's timely. So I wouldn't even see us being done with this, having somebody on board till, I would say comfortably April, maybe even May, depending on how we get things done. But so it's not that far before they move into the police academy.
Well, I think that's the way to go, and we should go out and find the employees we want. Backing up to the first individual that applied who's retired out of the Bay area, he has to go through the post.
Yeah, an update.
Yeah, what's the objection for him to do that?
There wasn't an objection. I just felt like, considering this individual started at San Francisco Police in 1985, there's nothing wrong with that. It's admirable and it's wonderful. He retired in 2015, but he's long been since in this business, and this business is a changing business. For one, he'd have to be updated on all the post requirements, which is going to be, I think they do that. I don't remember how long that is now. Did he tell you?
He didn't tell me. I looked into it because I've been through it. If you've been out of law enforcement for 3 years, you have to do an update automatically. It's a 3-week course. It used to be 2 weeks, now it's 3. And so it's easy. It's not something that somebody is against.
Yeah, and my other thought on this is I think the city's better served by finding a young individual that you're gonna mold and mentor, that's probably gonna be here for the remainder. I mean, you look at the staff you have today, not a single one of them is left.
He'd be right around 58 years old.
Right.
He's left when in 15.
He's the one I said is ideally suited for a level 1. A level 1 does everything that we do. You're only paying them no benefits, and you're not using them all the time. They can fill a gap, right? We have a person out on vacation for 3 weeks, somebody injured, we can have that person come in and fill a gap. They still have to complete the FTO program.
Is he
They're just-
interested in doing that?
I need to talk to him,
Yeah.
because he was interested enough to put an application in,
Sure.
and interested enough, it sounds like, to do the update, which he'd have to do even as a level 1.
And they don't carry weapons.
They
Yes, oh yeah.
So Ed Bowen did carry a gun.
Did
He was as a reserve.
Okay.
He was post certified. He did it all. He was there.
Our reserves are fully
basically they're full cops. A level 2 has to ride with a full-time police officer. A level 1 means he did the FTO program, he or she, and they can do the job by themselves. They don't come with the full benefit package. So you're just paying them whatever a level step officer is.
Well, if he's interested in doing that.
Well, I think that's ideal because there's gaps that we can utilize that to fill without having to do the full-time status, because that's the other issue. It's a demanding job. So
I didn't mean for this to get into a private conversation. But I only see one person out there in the audience still, but David, Kevin, anything on this before we move on?
No, I just, Chief and I spoke about this proposal, and I'm completely supportive. I think that's where we're seeing this, the agencies are able to successfully recruit their sponsoring folks to go to the academy, and I feel like that's gonna be our most successful route. And also with the chief's comments about a field reserve officer, if we can get someone with experience to serve. It's not something where we have funds set aside right now budget, but I think it's we can certainly look at that and establish a budget, because I do think it serves to
That's cheap.
alleviate.
Paying overtime and everything else.
Right.
and I do believe we still have reserve in our budget. Because we had one as of last year. And it was in our budget carrying over. So I'll just double check to make sure we left it in there.
I think this is a great thing because jails can hire a team. So you can find a lot of people interested and start pulling in and plucking them early. But this, I love it.
Well, without getting into any detail, but the guy from Mendocino who's in the jail now, is he Cloverdalian?
So according to Lieutenant Parker's dad, may work at the lumberyard down here,
No,
or he did, or something like that. I believe they are from Cloverdale.
nice.
Yeah. Most likely wants to come back here.
Well, good job, chief. It's, I know it's frustrating, we can't pay, but the big cities can pay. And that puts us at it.
But overall, I'm sorry, overall, Clover is very well and better than the sheriff's office.
Well, I know it is, it's less about money today, and it is about finding people who are interested in your career. You can go around all these places, and it's not about money, it's about people who want to do it. Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to.
There's so much.
A lot of lost interest.
Okay, well then, no hands are raised, so we're gonna move on to the City Hall holiday schedule, the 26th of December and Thursday, December 29th, we're gonna be closed.
Yeah,
You okay with that, Chief?
Absolutely.
Yes, I am. David, it's a done deal, okay?
Okay, all right. I just want to put on the record
Pushing this
that
for months. I love it.
part of the closure is intended to help save the city money that would otherwise be paid towards accrued floating holidays. And this allows employees to take them off during the week between Christmas and New Year's, and hopefully enjoy some time with their family and kids. And I think most of the staff at City Hall wants to take that time off anyway, so it's kind of mutually beneficial.
Good. Well, next we'll jump right down to standing items, and David, don't waste time if you don't think we need to know about it.
Okay, but just real quick on the update, the Feeding Turkey program, we've been really busy working with the team on wrapping up the final financing for the turkey program. Our official planned close date is December 12th. And we've a lot of documentation going around to complete that process. So once we sign on the dotted line, it's a done deal. And we will have our approved financing to implement the program. We did include a fairly substantial article in the Cloverdale Connect. I hope everybody received that in their mailbox about one of the key projects that was funded, which is the AMI meter project. So hope the article was informative and give folks an update that we're planning, once the financing done, we're planning to move forward fairly quickly starting next year. Okay, really no update on the NBS proposal, still working on that agreement. Including your packet is an update on the Measure P canvas revenue. And you kind of see that there was the change in the tax rate and the impact it had on revenue. That's just an informational report. on the update on the recall of extraordinary rate request. That has been approved. That is effective December 1st. So I think that will start to see the customer's bills, probably their first bill in early 2023.
And my wife is highly upset that she can't pay for 12 or 11 and get 12. So.
That was one of the changes approved by
Yes.
council.
It was, I know. Update on the CA water and wastewater.
Yeah, so we have continued to work with the state of California who initiated this water arrearages payment program. Well, there's really two programs. One was the water and wastewater arrearage payment program. We've completed that program, and it was for a kind of a fixed period of time where we save customers money by getting reimbursed to the state, and now we direct our residents who have outstanding bills to the low-income household water assistance program, and if they qualify, they get assistance directly from the state, and we get a check. So it's pretty helpful because it does help out our fund balance and our water utility, and it helps those customers who are having challenges paying the water bill. So just a quick update on that. It's these two programs we really try to take advantage of and to help our residential customers, but also to help out our water utility. So it's about $50,000 in total. That's about what we'll receive back in payments through the programs.
43,600.
Yeah.
Good. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, any good of the order?
Just a quick one. We maybe more of the report on public works too. We are installing new signs at our parks. Our park superintendent is out busy putting those signs in as we speak with the current park rules.
We need the rules. Okay. Anything else? Well then, Michael, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting to February the 6th, 2023.